Yeah.
Okay, you can see me and hear me. Hello, my name
Yeah.
is Michelle Madansky. I'm thrilled to be here with my fellow panelists, Jennifer Hyman and Orchid Bertelsen. I will do a formal introduction to both of them a little bit later, and I'm getting the internet connection is unstable, so I'm going to have Jennifer tell me if you can't hear me and maybe walk around my house. But hopefully for now you can hear me. I will say that 4 years ago I had the highlight of my professional career, which is I got to keynote at the actual South by Southwest on a topic which is near and dear to my heart, the elephant in the valley, around gender bias in Silicon Valley. So if anyone's interested, you could go to my website, michellemadansky.com, and listen to that panel. You can also see more about the research. And I think, several of you are wondering, why are we here talking about breadwinner moms? So to start with, I want to share a few statistics. Oops.
Michelle, I think you're frozen.
Oh, lost me? You guys?
Okay, you're back.
Okay. 15% of partnered U.S. moms were breadwinners. That is up from 3% in 1960. So that is people who are either married or partnered, who are moms. Other stats have seen this as much as 25%, but clearly huge growth in the past generation. There's the other statistic, which is that 1 in 4 moms are single moms. So we'll talk a little bit about more about that, but by nature, single moms are breadwinner moms. Another stat, which is really important, is that I've heard the numbers now, 56% or 58% of college graduates are women. Nikki, you can share what that is for Michigan. But women are more likely to graduate college, and for a lot of advanced degrees, they're more likely to be graduating. When you look at women of color, 2/3 of African-American graduates are female, 60% of Hispanic graduates are female. And so what this is creating is this next generation of women are going to be more poised to earn more money. And
Michelle, unfortunately, you're paused again.
And Michelle, I don't think we can see your presentation on screen.
Oh, you can't. Okay, so what do I do here? Share screen.
You should have an option at the bottom of your Zoom, to share the screen.
Yeah.
Okay.
You guys see it?
All clear.
Okay, did you see the beginning or no? I'll just go through this quickly here. These are just the stats that I was sharing. Great. And okay, the narrative is not great, which is when you do a research for breadwinner mom on Google, what you come up with is the Institute for Family Studies saying there's a happiness penalty for breadwinner moms. Cornell published a study saying that men are more likely to cheat if they're economically dependent on their female partners. And Jennifer and my alma mater, University of Chicago, Booth, published research saying that a woman out-earning her husband could even doom the marriage. There's increases the likelihood of divorce by 50%. So I am about to celebrate my 25th wedding anniversary, and a lot of you on the phone, I'm sure, are kind of younger, either thinking about getting married, just having kids. And my goal is to give some lessons learned for this next generation of parents, because there are going to be more breadwinners. And I'm going to walk around the house to find a more stable location. So I have done some research, and I'm hoping to publish a book about breadwinner moms. If you are interested in participating in the research, please hit me up and I will send you a link to the survey. But I've done dozens of interviews with breadwinner moms. I still want to hear from more of them. I have done survey research with over 500 breadwinner moms, and as well as their spouses. So I have a lot of research. I actually shared some of this at a conference called the Me Convention several months ago, but I'm only going to share one slide with you today, mainly so that we can have more of a discussion. Of the people that I spoke to, about 1/3 of them were the sole breadwinners, and a quarter of them earn twice as much as their spouse. Okay, so some of the challenges of breadwinner moms, and this is from the mom's perspective and the dad's perspective. And what you can see is that several of these, 4 of them are similar. So the first thing is having time together as a couple, which is interesting because, you know, it's just something that sometimes gets sidelined as you're busy working and raising kids. Sex life and romance, a little bit higher for women than for men. Interesting. Having time for myself, also important for both of them. How we spend money on a day-to-day basis, number 4. But the thing which is different, which I thought was really interesting, is that for dads, having time together as a family came in the top 5, actually is number 2. So are the moms, you know, more focused on, you know, taking care of the kids, not spending time as a family unit? And then for the moms, and we'll talk a little bit more about roles and responsibilities, keeping the house clean. So that was something that came up. You know, different challenges. And I'm going to share these lessons.
Michelle, your audio is not coming through.
At all?
Correct, you're very weak.
You might be covering the microphone.
Huh. Continue to walk into other rooms. Maybe this will help. Is it any better?
Yeah.
Yes,
You get a tour of my
better.
house in addition to this. Okay, so Jennifer Hyman. Jennifer and I have known each other since high school, and she has an amazing job. She is head of social media conversation at Wells Fargo. She is also a single mom by choice. Her daughter, Veronica, is a freshman in high school and an amazing young lady. Orchid Bertelsen also has a great job, head of digital innovation for Nestle USA, innovation for chocolate. What could be better than that? And Orchid is a co-breadwinner. I should also say the 3 of us all live in the Bay Area, but we are all from the Midwest originally. So we have that in common. And then, you know, my story is that I am a breadwinner mom. When I moved to the Bay Area in 2003, my children were 3 and 2, and my husband became a stay-at-home dad. So he is now back in the workforce, and I, until coronavirus, was an empty nester, but I now have the boomerang children who are back from college, obviously taking advantage of my bandwidth. So with that, I want to start with Jennifer. And Jennifer, you know, share the story about how you became a single mom and how, you know, thinking about back when we were in high school, is this something that you might have thought of? And what has your journey been?
Sure. So I hope everyone can hear me. My fellow panelists can gut check me if they can't hear me or they can't see me. I think that the camera right now is focused on Michelle and her house tour of duty, which is great. So back in high school, I was probably best known as being the free spirit, the independent one. And while I always dated and had men in my life, I'm not really sure that I ever envisioned myself settling down into a traditional lifestyle. I'm someone who in my 20s and into my early 30s moved from city to city, country to country, always wanting to strive for that experience. I loved the outdoors and I loved live music. When I landed in San Francisco in the early 30s, I was continuing my work journey after finishing my MBA and found myself in an amazing job at Charles Schwab as they launched online trading. I had a very rich life, loved living here. And as I hit my mid-30s, I realized marriage was probably not in the cards for me, but I did want to have a child. This coincided with the time in which becoming a single mom by choice, literally utilizing sperm banks for women to get pregnant, was a very achievable thing to do. And there were many role model examples in my city, in my neighborhood, who were doing that. I pursued the path, and I will say for anyone who is thinking about that or confronts that challenge in the future, you tend to spend all your energy on what you know. How am I going to get pregnant? You never think about what happens after that. So I hope in some of the successive questions, I'll be able to talk a little bit about work and some of the challenges that I've faced after having my child. I think the key thing, though, was I always knew I would work full-time. I knew the reliance would continue to be on me as a breadwinner, and I really wasn't afraid of that. I embraced that challenge the same way I would have anything else in my life, trying to get a new job, trying to meet someone to date. And I will say I continued to date throughout my child's entire life thus far. In fact, still to this day have a boyfriend. They've changed a few times over the years, and there have been a few dry spells, I'll admit. But I think the key is you set priorities, you set goals the same way you would with anything else in your life. And I feel very honored and lucky that I was able to get pregnant on my own. I would have otherwise probably gone for adoption. And I'm thankful to have had the support network, including friends like Michelle, to support me in my early years, and friends like Orchid to support me professionally in some of my more recent years.
Thank you, Jennifer. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the support network. Orchid, can you tell your story a little bit? You were raised by a single mom in Chicago area. She was an immigrant, which adds another level of complexity, and working full time. So how has that kind of shaped your journey? Right.
Sure. So I am first generation. I was born in Kansas, and my parents had been in grad school. So my mom and dad emigrated over from Taiwan in the early 80s. And so young, and it's something that I'm pretty open about sharing, but my father was physically abusive, and so it was one of those instances where, they really did, it was for the best for everyone. And so, my mother, she was a single mom, honestly, for all intents and purposes. My father was an entrepreneur, and so he chose to not pay himself a salary so that he wouldn't have to pay child support. And so my mother, being an immigrant and being so far away from her family, it was really just the two of us for a number of years. And so everything I had, everything I was exposed to, she provided, and she set an example for. So, she had worked at Sears headquarters for a very long time. She was in sourcing. And so for me growing up, it was never a question of whether or not I would work or whether or not I would provide for my family in that way. I just really didn't have an example of a stay-at-home mom. I have friends and family who are stay-at-home moms, and it's so incredibly something that I had experience with, and nor did I really aspire to be myself, to be perfectly honest. I take a lot of pride and satisfaction in my work, sometimes a little too much so. But for me, it was never a question of working or not working. And so my family now, there's three of us. It's my husband, Eric, and my daughter, Quinn, who's going to turn 3 in May. We had promised her a bouncy house, so I'm hoping that we can somehow still make that happen. But it's just the three of us in the Bay Area. We don't have much family nearby. My husband has a cousin in the South Bay. But for us, obviously we'll talk about it, but in San Francisco, you kind of have to be a dual income household. And so we can certainly be and try to reach 50 as much as possible.
Okay, great. So Orchid, I do want to talk a little bit later about how you and your husband kind of share in those responsibilities, but let's talk about the support networks. And, I think that for me, moving here, I moved here from New York in 2003. My children were 3 and 2 years old. My husband became a stay-at-home dad. And, while I had a lot of friends, I didn't have people who were in similar situations. And I found that to be really challenging. I mean, I could say to this day, my husband, Travis, who will literally talk to a wall, has no friends who are stay-at-home dads. So I think that even in Brooklyn, where we used to live, in the Bay Area, which are super liberal, they're just, they're not that present. But let's talk about kind of the support network that you have, either, moms in similar situations or other people in your life who support you. And Jennifer, will you start?
Sorry, did you want Jennifer to start?
Yeah, Jennifer, do you mind starting?
Sure, I'd be happy to go first. I think the key thing when you're thinking of what's the support you need is you really have to take stock in what your current job is, what the requirements and priorities are, and where can you fill in around the gaps. So I'll share a very personal story that I think when my daughter was about 18 months old, one of the things that I realized was so difficult was literally going to Macy's to buy underwear. And I hope that isn't TMI. I actually called Michelle and said, I really just need to go to the department store and buy some basics. And Michelle said, if you're willing to drive the 30 minutes to my house, I will watch your daughter for you. You know, simple things like, for me, I love to sleep late. I was never getting any sleep. Michelle said, bring your daughter down. You guys can spend the night. We have an extra bedroom. I will get up early in the morning with her. So Michelle and another friend from high school were critical support network folks for me who basically said, we will drop whatever we need to do to help you out. Similarly, I needed a lot of help with childcare because I did have a full-time job and I was expected to be in office 5 days a week. Thankfully, I had the space in my own house to bring in an au pair. I evaluated the financial considerations and also the likelihood of, again, support networks fail at a point in time. How was I going to manage through that? And I decided a live-in au pair would be a better solution for me than a higher price nanny or even a very close daycare center. So boom, now I have another person living in the house. And I think that the third thing I really activated, beyond trying to meet people locally who had children of a similar age, or to take stock and learn lessons from moms and dads who'd gone through situations like me, was I really activated for me a family network. And I used to be someone who would probably talk to my mom and dad on the phone, and they're still living today in their 80s, like once every 10 days. And my mom and I immediately realized, like, this is not going to be enough. You know, and we started talking on the phone like once every 4 days. My parents even said, let us know your child's, you know, school vacations or the gaps when you're going to need childcare, and we will fly from Chicago to San Francisco to help take care of them. So I think you enable whatever the means around you are that support those priorities. But for a support network, it doesn't all have to be local. You know, you can really gain a lot of support from friends, from family, from a work network who can really empathize with your situation. Over to you, Orchid.
Yeah, for us, I mean, the support network came, I feel like we've finally built a community around our daycare. So my daughter goes to daycare. I'm actually on the board of the daycare. I'm very type A, not surprising at all. But you know, there are kids in her class who she grew up with. And it's really interesting in where grandparents or families are. And so it's almost like you get to choose your friends in your own community. So with our friends, I mean, I turned 38 in July, and so we're on the older end of starting to have kids within our immediate friend group. So we were the first ones, and it was quite lonely when people would go out for brunch. We wouldn't be able to go, and they wouldn't really quite understand, you know, what our schedule was like with a newborn at the time. And so now our friends are starting to have kids, and they're looking to us for advice because we were one of the first ones. So, you know, the community is starting to be built from just our personal friends. A lot of them, my husband met in business school, so we were in Chicago for a while together. He went to Northwestern. And so we moved with 3 or 4 different couples that were very close friends of ours to the Bay Area after graduation. So that's one community, which is very friend-based. You just kind of have to be patient for when you're all in the same situation. Another one is, you know, as I mentioned, just this community around daycare. So it's funny, you don't actually get a lot of opportunities to go ahead and socialize with the parents because you really only see each other at drop-off and pickup. And oftentimes it's kind of like if you have a dog and you're walking the dog around the neighborhood and you know your neighbors by their dog's name, but not by their name. It's kind of the same with parents of other children. Like, you know the child's name, but you have no idea what the parents' names are. And so now that my daughter's a little older, all the kids are starting to have birthday parties, and we are starting to lean on each other and, you know, be vulnerable and say, hey, you know, can we drop, you know, Quinn, my daughter, off for a few hours, and we'll do the same for you guys. We just need to go get some things done, right? And so it's interesting that it's fun that you get to pick your own community. I think that what's challenging is that it's not always easily findable right away.
Orchid, can you tell everybody about your podcast?
Oh, yeah, sure. So my podcast is called Mama Juice. It's with my best friend Stephanie, and it's called Mama Juice because we're supposed to be slightly inebriated while doing it. We thought it would be fun for like a drug history for moms, but we created it because as soon as I had Quinn, still staying at home and on maternity leave, and it was much harder than I ever thought that it would be. Because, we're talking social media, but, on social media, you see these different mom influencers and mom bloggers who are, blissfully breastfeeding in a field, wearing a flower crown, and they're glowing with this pregnancy glow. And for me, I was mostly just very sweaty while I was, both pregnant and then also just after having my child. And so I started this podcast because I was feeling quite lonely. And I wanted to debunk a lot of those stereotypes and to tell other moms and other parents and other women to just kind of take the pressure off yourself. We're all learning as we go along. Nobody has anything figured out. And just because something works for someone doesn't necessarily mean it'll work for you. So on the podcast, Stephanie and I, we talk about different topics like birth plans, breastfeeding is one, and we're actually going to have under 3, and she's a stay-at-home mom. So I think, in this age where we're all working from home, some juggling kids, want some pointers from her on how to keep kids distracted. That's not just watching Frozen for the night.
Great, thank you. And Jennifer, so my husband and I met I was in a PhD program in business, and he was an undergraduate philosophy major who took a long time to graduate. So I was never under the impression that he was going to out-earn me. But as a executive woman who's out there in the dating world, what advice would you give to single women who are dating men who might not be as successful? Because at the end of the day, it's hard to find people as successful as some of us are.
Yes, well, in the Bay Area, many of us, even with a good job, really do get by a little bit beyond paycheck to paycheck. I think when you're out there dating, just like everything else, you have to ask, what are the priorities? Now, for me, earning money, maybe it dates back to the one time I actually saw a palm reader in New Orleans when I was there for the annual Jazz Fest. And she said to me, Jen, you're not someone who really cares about money. You just seem to have this belief it's going to be there, you're going to make it work, you're going to roll through the troughs and the peaks as well. So I don't think it's something I've ever thought about. I think for me in the dating world, and the advice I'd give to people today, you have to decide, are you looking for that person who bears significant similarity to you, or who bears more characteristics and passions that might complement you? I've tried both angles, and I think what I've found for me, it's really better if I find someone who is much closer on the similarity side. You're listening to a panel of 3 women who probably all have type A, very strong personalities at times, and I've learned I cannot be in a relationship with somebody who is much quieter, who is going to be deferential to me, because it's not going to work. Now, the money piece, I shared an example with Michelle and Orchid that a boyfriend I had 5 years ago, who I really, truly loved, was hardly a breadwinner. He managed an office for a high-powered mortgage broker in the Pacifica, California area, and it never mattered to me what he earned. But what I did determine in that case is I cared a lot that if I was going to bring someone into mine and my daughter's life, they had to contribute other things. They had to be able to cook. They had to have a nice car, or a reasonably functioning car, so they could help with childcare duties that I might have had with my daughter. And in the case of this gentleman, he didn't bring either of those to the table. He couldn't cook. All he could do was really read CNN on his phone. And that wasn't enough for me. So I think you have to look at, again, where are those shared passions? Does money really matter? And I think women and men have to ask the hard question. Are you in this to one day retire so that somebody else will be your primary breadwinner? Now, I've seen a few of Michelle and my classmates from Highland Park High School in Illinois joining the Facebook group, and I know many of them have probably had to ask the same question. What's my expectation, either being single, married, or divorced, in terms of what I'm going to contribute to being the breadwinner? And I think if you decide that for yourself, if you're comfortable being the one who's likely to always provide, then it really doesn't matter what someone you date contributes financially. Think about the other characteristics and how they help make the whole relationship more pleasing, more satisfying for the long run.
Awesome. So I'm just walking over to look at the clock. It looks like we only have 2 minutes left. So I want to end with some of the words of wisdom from some of the breadwinner moms and dads that that answered our survey. So because I think it's all really good advice. Take care of yourself first, and that will make you the best mom, partner, friend that you can be. I think we all know that self-care is important, especially right now. Be very specific in discussing your needs with your partner. This is a huge issue on both sides. There's like so many type A moms just become passive aggressive and think that their husband should know what they want them to do. Establish a routine for your household chores. This goes hands in hand. Teach the partner how to load the dishwasher correctly. I would add to that, get over it if they don't load the dishwasher correctly, because it really doesn't matter. Another huge thing is that if there's a time when you are talking about becoming the breadwinner, talk about what that's going to mean, what the arrangement's going to be, how long do you see that lasting. Really have an open conversation as opposed to it just kind of happening. Make friends with other moms. Make love as much as possible daily. I would say be freaky. Love that response. From the dads, again, this is another perspective, which is sit down immediately, talk about the new dynamic and how responsibilities will be split. Be there if she needs you and always praise her for what she is worth. Amen to that. Remember that personal worth is not measured by earnings. Keep the house clean. That would be lovely. Don't allow your pride to inhibit your partner's ability to maximize her earning potential, and support her, and of course be patient and caring to one another. I would end by saying in this time we should all be patient and caring to one another. I'm seeing Nikki, so I want to again thank Jennifer and Orchid for coming out here. Thank you, Nikki, for putting this together on such a last minute. It's been fun. Hopefully there was not too many AV issues, and feel free to reach out to any of us on Twitter. Thank you guys.